but I can start talking about it anyway. So, Darkest Before the Dawn, Unstoppable Small Caps in Asia meme. Not really a positive title. Um, Perhaps suggests some hope, but all of us have been in crypto. We've been in crypto for a while. We know what crypto used to be like, and we know what crypto is like today. And it's not great today. You know, a lot of commentary on our current cycle has been dominated by meme coins. And there was a really famous talk last year at Token 2049 called the Meme Coin Super Cycle by this guy, Murad. And the point of that talk was that we have this worldwide crisis of meaning, this sort of big problem, generalized decline. And because of that, people are going to start finding meaning in increasingly dumb places. And because meme coins are some of the most dumb of the dumb places, we can expect them to be particularly popular because reasons, effectively. Now, it's an interesting thesis, and I think it's an accurate observation of what's going on for lots of stuff, and that's why it was really well received. But just taking that as an input, I think is, and glossing over it, you know, we have a worldwide crisis of meaning. So now let's go here. Okay, well, we have a worldwide crisis of meaning. That sounds pretty bad. It sounds like we have an incentives problem. It sounds like we have a distortion and incentives, and we should probably do something about that. Now, the whole problem with incentives, you know, they're a function of technology, and the entire premise of cryptocurrency is we're trying to use technology to engineer better incentives. You know, money is the ultimate incentive in a society, and really what we're trying to build with cryptocurrency is a better incentives system, a better monetary system. So solving that initial problem, I think is a lot more important than just saying, we have this bad thing that exists, so probably more bad things will exist, and we should just dive right in. So that's really what I'm going to be talking about today. For these pictures, I've updated to use some different pictures of Barcelona. This is Barcelona in 1937. So for me, the Spanish Civil War is always the most interesting part about Barcelona's very interesting history. And I think the Spanish Civil War is particularly relevant for students of cryptocurrency and users of cryptocurrency. One, there's a lot of acronyms, which are analogous to a lot of the tickers that we have in cryptocurrency. And two, there's a lot of ideology, a lot of like really lofty political ideology in the Spanish Civil War. And the Spanish Civil War itself was this practical, empirical validation of a lot of that lofty ideology, which is what we're working on today. But the thing is, their incentives were different because their technology was different. So Barcelona 1937, this is the telephone exchange here. And if you wanted to control the flow of information in Barcelona in 1937, you had to get a group of guys with rifles and send them to that building and kick the other guys out of that building with rifles. So they did that, and it worked, but you did have to have a rolling street battle for 5 days. And lots of those guys with rifles died, and there was lots of issues. And even the communists were the counter-revolutionaries and more weird things going on. Now, that's not a direct parallel to cryptocurrency, but we do have a very similar level of random internecine disorder for no reason based on lofty political ideas. So I think that's kind of an important parallel with the Spanish Civil War. And being in Barcelona is worth noting. Okay, crypto today. Everybody kind of knows something's off. It's really embarrassing. I think it's probably the most embarrassing industry. I don't like to tell people that I work in cryptocurrency, and it's not even an OPSEC thing. It's just that I know what they will assume, based on what they've learned about crypto, is that it's predominantly shysters. You know, in Murad's talk, he says it's dominated by speculators. But it's not really just that. There's also a criminal element, a deceptive element, and oftentimes those are kind of the most successful parts of it. So it's not something that we are particularly proud of. And again, I think the challenge there is what can we do about it? The challenge is not, okay, let's just dive right in. Everything sucks, so let's buy some dog pictures. I think it's, okay, well, how do we fix the incentives and we stop having this problem? So an extension of this phenomenon, this is back to the Spanish Civil War. This is a quote from the start of the Spanish Civil War by this Basque philosopher. In Spain, even the atheists are Catholic. We have a similar phenomenon today where a lot of things are defined negatively. So you had the atheists in the Spanish Civil War, but they weren't really just positively defined as we don't believe in something. They were really more negatively defined as we are against this iteration of the church. So they were more negatively defined, and that gave them more of a characteristic of what they're against. And we have the same phenomenon today where people nominally in crypto are not positively defined by what they want crypto to do, but they're negatively defined by just, we don't want legacy finance, or we don't want this, or we don't want that. And there's a lot of weird destructive externalities that come from that. And it's also kind of a distorted incentive problem. Where we see it in crypto specifically, well, you get the meme coins, but you also see all of the influencers in the cycle today, right? So you have guys like Michael Saylor, who's not really a crypto first guy, right? He's a corporate structure wizard who is able to create money from moving stuff around. But now he has a really big picture in crypto influence because he's able to leverage that narrative for that same purpose. All of the companies in crypto today in this like embarrassing era of our industry are the same way. They're kind of negatively defined. Treasury companies are the big thing now, which is where you basically take crypto, you remove all of its crypto features, you wrap it in a legacy financial product, and then you flip it to retail. And they're doing this, and everybody kind of knows it's dumb, but because we have this crisis of meaning, they're like, well, what are you going to do? People do dumb stuff, and that's where money comes from these days. So it's ultimately this financial incentive distortion problem that needs to be worked on. As a corollary to the financial distortion problem, I think we get this thing I call enslopification, where everything's just kind of getting worse in ways that are hard to define accurately, but you can see it. Buildings are getting a little bit uglier, cities are getting a little bit dirtier, academic standards, universities are getting a little bit worse. And also in just general incentives, you look at business, right? If you are in entrepreneurship, it's not really about making a company and building a product that people want and getting value and creating value. Today, a lot of it is just about raising money. And if you raise money and then you raise more money later, you can be a gazillionaire. So again, it's an incentive problem. The incentives are distorted. And crypto, and what we're trying to do is fix those incentives and solve that root problem. Not just dive right in accepting this negative premise. So, a lot of stuff that he's right about. Crypto, yeah, it's speculation first, tech second. I don't think it's speculation only, but it's very hard to see through the noise. Like, speculation definitely has its own exponential growth, and because it dominates, it's easy to look at it and think it's speculation only. Retail does not care about the tech. It's worse than that. Retail is also like very easy to fleece and is just diving right into every scam left and right. Some scams are like legit-ish, right? Like maybe XRP or things like that. But then other scams are just basically criminal. Like you went to Bitcoin meetup in 2017, people are trying to shill OneCoin and things. Tech alts, memes with extra steps. He's right, because most capital in crypto is in tech alts that don't actually do something. They just have a narrative and they're basically just looking for an investor so they can exit. So it's not what everybody's doing. Like there's mission-driven coins. And I think mission-driven coins are not like that, but a lot are like that. He has this concept called memetic premium, which he thinks is kind of unique to meme coins. I think that's, again, financial distortion, so it's a bit everywhere. But he says, hey, look, you get this community, you get this other stuff with meme coins. You're not just pricing the fact that you have a tradable token. You're pricing the fact that you're together and you have this like mission and all this other stuff. Okay, maybe. I mean, yeah, you have to have some sort of explanation for why there's a market cap and why the market cap is higher than you think it would be. I don't think that's limited to meme coins or crypto. You see that everywhere today. He's the guy who gave this talk, the meme coin super cycle last year. So basically the guy explaining the premise that meme coins are here to stay and they're going to do really well. And they've been definitive, sure, for this last 2 years of the market. So I'm kind of using him to personify that idea based on the talk he gave. So we have these two paths. We have this crisis of meaning, and you can just accept it as a premise and say, okay, we have to find the most meaningless stuff we can and try to convince other people to buy it so we can make some money. Or you can say, hey, there's this obvious problem. It probably means that we have some fragility in the financial system, and it's actually more vulnerable than it was before to being improved with other monetary tools like cryptocurrency. So I think meme coins aren't the main thing. They're the most observable thing, right? But the actual thing is reduction of capital friction. And this is a technology that crypto enables. You can actually get lots of capital from random people on the internet and concentrate it in unpredictable ways or whimsical ways. This happened first with the DAO in 2016, where kind of overnight you had millions of dollars just appear in this crypto product that itself was a meme coin because it never did what it was supposed to do. but it had a really compelling narrative and it had a really compelling community angle. But then you also have this other stuff where like the whole GameStop phenomenon, right? Where it's not crypto at all. It's just a function of communications technology. So the idea that meme coins and dog pictures are somehow emblematic, to me is incorrect. I think they're just kind of the latest manifestation of it. Another thing here is a memetic premium. I mean, everybody knows that stocks are kind of weirdly priced now, right? If you look at multiples, and like Tesla's crazy, Amazon's crazy. But at least Tesla and Amazon, they have these software products and like potential ability to change the world or turn into another business. And there's maybe growth you can model. Chipotle just sells burritos. I think everybody here is familiar with the burrito. It's not really a proprietary technology. There's not crazy ingredients. There's not really barriers to entry. Right now, Chipotle is worth $52 billion on earnings of about $1 billion a year. So their P to E is about 35. So if you wanted to buy the business of Chipotle today, you need $52 billion. You basically have to sell everybody on the planet a $20 burrito to recover your investment and have no competitors ever. So there's nothing really special about it, but it still has this memetic premium, right? It's essentially a commodity business that's still getting this memetic premium. So trying to attribute that to other, random stuff, I think the problem, again, is these distorted incentives. It's not the memes. Okay, so the actual trends and like what we could as investors or as technology makers focus on to try to fix things and to look for good news. One, I think the impact of the internet is totally underappreciated. Everybody still thinks of it as kind of a better telephone. But the reality is it's going to shift incentives a lot and change the way that we live and work and interact way more than has been forecasted and appreciated. And of course, if you need incentives in that system, it's going to be cash. Two, meme coin cults. Yeah, they get a lot of praise, but none of them have survived price going down. The cult is ultimately about price going up. So as soon as price goes down, the cult disappears. And maybe it gets replaced by another cult, maybe not. But that's totally glossed over in this whole meme coin super cycle thing, is that as soon as the price goes down, the cult goes bye-bye. And three, crypto does have non-speculative use cases. They're hard to see, but I would argue they're also growing exponentially. So you want to be working on products that actually address that and are prepared to take over. Okay, so the internet, most of the impact people see is like, oh, we go from the corner store to the Walmart, and then you put the internet, and now you're Amazon, right? But you're really just kind of doing legacy things in a slightly more efficient and bigger way. It's not really like the internet is step changing anywhere. What I think is more interesting more recently is like the 2016 presidential election was probably decided by memes and internet influence. And the 2021 presidential election was probably the same way. So this difference in ownership and control sponsored by the internet, where you are actually open sourcing propaganda, I think that actually has way more impact, and that hasn't really been appreciated yet. And in that system, the ultimate incentive is going to be money. And right now, the only money on the internet is still bank cards, credit cards. And bank cards and credit cards don't play nice with the idea of open source propaganda. So we've seen open source propaganda have real world impact in presidential elections, but we really haven't seen any growth in internet cash or payments other than bank cards. So I think that trend is going to change. Cults founded on price good cannot endure price bad, right? And this meme coin whiff is just a year old, right? And a lot of these still have large market caps, but people only buy them to try to get explosive wealth with a financial nihilistic worldview. And as soon as that stops working, they leave. And that's already happening. You don't need like 10 years of history. You just need like 6 months of history to take a look at that. So that's one W I'll take already for eCash. And for a lot of other projects, right? We are still building stuff and engineering solutions and improving tech through some extended negative price action. And meme coins do not do that. So it's a distinction between mission-driven projects and meme-driven projects. And in the mission-driven projects, you're not really organized around a certain number. You're organized around a certain value and a certain technology that you expect. And even if the price is bad, we're still around. We're still making good technology. I would say that the non-speculative growth cases are exponential, even if they're hiding. The main evidence for this, I mean, you can look at TVL on Ethereum. You could look at total volume of DeFi, and that's like crypto use cases. Yeah, that's going up. That's pretty easy to see. The cash one is harder to see, but I would say that the total market cap of stablecoins is a good analog for that. And if you look at the total market cap of, this is just Tether, You can see very early on, 2016, it looks basically flat. I would say that's where we're at on the exponential curve of cash use in general in crypto. It looks flat. It's hard to see it through speculation. But once you get enough pieces in place, you start to get these more vertical movements. And I would say, too, the prediction of the next couple of years is this is going to go more or less straight up. And we're already seeing that somewhat. All right, so why eCash in particular? I really think it's this simple. It starts with this crisis of meaning. Like, yes, all the problems of the 2008 financial crisis are still with us. They're arguably worse. They haven't really been fixed at all by crypto. And you can take the nihilistic worldview of like, okay, well, crypto's never going to do it. Or you can take what I think is the more pragmatic worldview, which is that the system is getting more fragile. And you can see that even like in 2013, if you talk to people about the Fed and interest rates, they would think you're a crank. Whereas now everybody's seeing the dancing enemy chick and like the money printer, and everybody's like, oh yeah, it's a total racket. Like that's just common knowledge now. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be like that forever. I'd say that actually means it's trending more in the other direction. Very few projects are trying to actually solve it, but the ones that are getting better. So you have a system that's getting worse. You have solutions that are getting better. And of those solutions, there's not many. So eCash is one of them. There's this persistent myth in the whole meme coin worldview that there's limitless cryptos. And it's true that there are limitless meme coins. In fact, like the most successful companies this year have been the companies that just make hundreds of thousands of meme coins and try to filter out the ones that will be shilled most successfully. That's true, but there's not limitless mission-driven projects. There's very few mission-driven projects. Even if you look at the top 100, top 50, top 10, most of those projects are not maintained at all. Most of those projects don't have much of a mission. Most of them are still kind of number go up meme cults, and when the number does not go up, the cults get abandoned. So the mission-driven coins, I think, are going to be better positioned, and they have a lot less competition than is commonly supposed. The competitors to eCash are kind of all in this room right now. It's not actually a huge market with like, oh, there's 1,000 people and everybody can do it. No, it's actually really hard to organize people around a goal like this and make persistent progress towards it. So as things change and as use of this stuff picks up, you'll have to be on these empirically tested projects that have empirically tested code and real world experience and have iterated through these problems before. All right, this is just my favorite historical example of darkest before the dawn. Everybody knows that Greece is a bit of a large cultural influence on our politics today and all of our structures today. But that wasn't like destiny or anything. It was actually a pretty close run thing back in the day. So in the early 5th century, they got invaded by the world's largest superpower and military empire, the Persians, and they barely kicked them out, lost a lot of their cities in the process. And the way incentives and everything work in a democracy, shortly after that, they found basically a big pile of money outside of Athens. And they had two competing proposals for how to use that money. And one of the proposals was kind of just like the HODL meme coin proposal, which was, hey, let's just get everybody some cash. And that was actually very popular and almost won. Even though, the world's largest military empire in history was going to invade them again, everybody knew that. There was still a really popular nihilistic view of like, well, let's just give everybody some money, then we'll be richer. And the other proposal was, hey, we should use that money and basically do an app dev project, and we're going to finance 200 triremes, and when they come back, we're going to use those triremes to make sure that we defeat them militarily. And that narrowly passed. They built the ships. They wanted Salamis. The Persians were kicked out. And, 1,000-year golden age, basically, after that. They actually go back, as soon as Alexander the Great comes in and conquers Persia, flips it the other way. So even though it was a very close-run thing, they said, no, we're mission-driven. We have certain vision. We have certain goals. We're not going to just take this money and hand it to ourselves. We're going to take a pretty sizable risk here and basically gamble it all on taking on the world's strongest military empire. And they win. So it can happen. There's this human tendency to look at a data point, and you see the data point and you just extrapolate it everywhere into the future. You say, what I see today is what will always be. And everybody wants to take the Excel spreadsheet, go down the column and click and drag and be like, that is the forecast. That's what's going to happen. But that's not actually how it works, right? You have to look at the vector and not just the data point. So the popularity of meme coins, the domination of speculation in crypto, this whole financial malaise, that's a data point. If you zoom out, there's always golden ages, there's hard times, there's good times, there's bad times. And throughout it all, you have to have some sort of mission and goal and commitment. So even if, the dog coins seem like they've done very well, and even if, social media conditions people to look at that and be like, that guy made a bunch of money, and therefore you should just like embrace financial nihilism. I don't even think it's the most lucrative thing to do, even if it looks like it is temporarily. I think that's just a bit of a data point. And you need to zoom out and look at the vector and the bigger picture. So with mission-driven projects like eCash, that's what we're working on. And that's what we'll keep doing. Thanks. Any questions? Any from the chat? We have a little bit of time. I can put one more slide up if you go to. Let me do the next one. So this is not an exhaustive list of Spanish political organizations during the Civil War. These are only left-leaning organizations. These are only organizations that fielded actual soldiers. And then over here on the right, I have meme coins that are remaining in the top 250. I've probably missed some, but as you can see, there's really not that many. So even though it looked like there's this huge trend and like stuff is going on and oh no, it's actually a pretty limited impact. Beyond that, there's not much of a comparison here. I just wanted to show that both of these organizations have similar affinities for acronyms. And this is another, I just thought it was a nerdier concept, but in naval history, there's a concept called fleet in being. So like one of the reasons you want to have a navy is to project power and change things in the world. But you don't necessarily always have to be bombing harbors and things with your navy. Just having it exist exerts a certain controlling influence because of what it might do. And if you have projects like eCash that are capable of taking on worldwide scale, even if they haven't done it yet, they're capable of running the most popular hashing algorithm in the world that already has a huge amount of infrastructure mining stuff out there. As long as you keep making progress and as long as the technology still exists, it's always this credible threat. And a lot of what we're trying to do in cryptocurrency is fix incentives by using technology to fix money, right? And as long as you're able to credibly do that and have it existing, and as long as the prevailing financial system is getting worse and more embarrassing, then the odds are just getting higher.
So, question regarding memes. So, in eCash, there's now like kind of like two factions, which are very closely allied, but there's like the ultimate goal is like XCC should be like the money that everybody uses, and we should go there as quickly as possible. And the other side is like, oh no, actually stable coins are the like ultimate killer app. Do you see if like hypothetically speaking, if the focus were to more shift towards stablecoins, do you think that would harm the mission-driven, or like in what ways do you think that would harm the mission-driven aspect of eCash, if that kind of makes sense?
Yeah. So for me, I think stablecoins are it's accepting kind of empirical reality feedback. And the reality is that if you're a minority change, it's the same way we have to deal with a difficulty adjustment algorithm. Like you also have to deal with a bit of a price volatility adjustment. If you're trying to solve payments, you still have to actually solve the problem. Same as the Spanish Civil War, you have all these lofty political goals and like the anarchists take over and like everything has communes and they put posters and everything up. Okay, well, people don't necessarily think the same as the leaders of those organizations. People don't necessarily have the same concerns or incentives and everything. So part of the thing with cryptocurrency is actually engineering for the real world. And I think right now, the pivot towards stablecoins and kind of trying to head off the more controlling stablecoins, the more government-focused stablecoins, is where more influence lies and is kind of on the critical path. I think that you really ultimately need unstoppable money. So you need something like just XCC. But you can't get people to just change their money, right? All you can do is engineer better incentives. And I think stablecoins right now are one of the best tools for engineering better incentives.
Okay, we got a question from the chat here. Hold on, let me just read this out for you. From Nate, why do you think severely flawed functional projects take off like ETH, gas fees, and Solana cancel transactions, etc.?
Well, ETH was very early to the party, and ETH was really set up well by the failures of BTC. When BTC decided to deprecate on-chain transactions, ETH was really the only project that was ready and waiting to take that throughput. So it got really this huge kick in the pants from that. Then from there, it had first mover advantage. They were the first guys to have AMMs and swaps, and people do like to trade things. Nobody else could compete with them for a while, so they got the ball rolling with that. And there's a lot of theoretical things you can complain about with ETH, but they did actually solve those problems. And to the point today, ETH is kind of the only place you can do useful things on crypto, like give yourself over-collateralized loans. You have some kind of the ETH killers that try to do the same thing, but ETH has the most empirical history for solving those problems. But the main reason is that BTC committed to being permanently flawed at the exact same time that ETH was ready to take that. So it was kind of a perfect storm. Like timing matters.
Okay, and another question from Kane. He asks, we recently saw Zcash pump, and some may say that's a mission-driven project, but to me, it's still got a lot of flaws. Why does it seem like only eCash supporters can see those flaws? A spicy question there.
Yeah, it's tough. I just think you have to not worry about that. There's a lot of lies about things that happen in the real world. Like I would prefer reality to be different in many ways, but it's often not. I think that Zcash it's very safe to say nice things about it because it's mostly an academic project that's not really trying to solve real problems or threaten existing projects. And I just think that most of the team of Zcash knows a lot of the team of other top projects. So I think it's a bit of a popular thing to say nice things about Zcash, but I don't think it solves too many popular problems. And I think it's a cool academic toy. So I'm glad that it pumped because it shows that, some smaller caps can still catch a frisbee, if you will. And it's important that effect is still true, for eCash to be able to get on people's radar and deal with that unsavory aspect of reality. But trying to actually diagnose it, or like any question that begins with like, why do people do this thing I wish they didn't do? You can't really answer those.
Sure, Harold comes through.
So I'm just wondering, obviously you said virtually zero projects are building cash, right? And what would you say, for example, like Dash, right? They are trying to be digital cash. They are very focused on payments, instant transactions as well. What would you say, are the elements that make, I know eCash has many of these characteristics, but you mentioned Zcash, you feel like they're not building digital cash. So I guess what elements do you think make it that's just a science project and that one's actually building cash?
Yeah,
right?
The difference between a science project and cash is the user interface. That's it. And even Zcash doesn't really they have some wallets and stuff, put in the whole thing of do you want this transaction to be private or not? Okay, nice. And with Dash, they have some development and some commitment to stuff, but I think it's still a bit of a technical reach. You have to be somewhat politically committed to want to use those tools. And I'm not going to say eCash is like we have a lot of work to do of the same thing, but that's really the next step is solving the user interface problem. You can't expect people to want to use your project for lofty political, theoretical reasons. You actually have to have an interface that just solves a problem that they don't have to think about. So I think that's the distinction. Right now, kind of everybody's a science project. So it's hard to just throw those bombs and criticize. But a commitment to ending that and trying to iterate empirically towards actually meeting users where they're at and not bringing users up to these lofty theoretical mountains, that'll be the distinguishing factor. And in fairness, a lot of infrastructure had to be built out and a lot of weird, stupid political arguments had to happen before that focus could emerge. And we're only really now at a place where we can comfortably focus on that. But it's still on us to fix that. Or anybody else, really, who wants to be serious cash. It's an open problem. It's a competitive problem. But, that's what's missing, is it has to be something that's practically useful and just solves problems. So it's all a user interface at this point, I think.
Would you say that Monero is quite close?
No. Oh my god. Oh my goodness. Ugh. Monero is a meme coin about privacy. Monero was my highest confidence pick in 2020 of going to $1,000 of like being great and everything. Because I thought privacy was like an underpumped narrative that actually solves a problem. It was pretty important. But they have this relentless commitment to terrible UX. And for them, they think it's like some sort of badge of honor. It's like you don't care about privacy if you can actually use this product. And I don't know, it was like the 7th time that I had to dig out my key after a year, then sync the whole damn chain again. I was like, well, I'm going to sell like 10, just sell it all. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. So I just think that their aggressive commitment to not solving the UX problem means that their privacy capacity is always a bit meme tier. And, Monero has become kind of synonymous with internet privacy. It probably dominates the niche, at least in like the memeplex. But I think their commitment to not solving the UX problem means that they're always going to be a bit of a science project.
Are the funders public of Monero? Are the funders of Monero public right now or not?
The founders?
Yeah.
That's maybe just an academic question. I don't know. I think what Fluffy
I don't-
was one of the main devs, or
Right.
do you not know?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think like Monero is a bit like complicated in the sense that some of them are public. Like I think Andres, I think he's working on Xano. He was one of the original people who did that implementation. Fluffy Pony was the lead maintainer for a certain time, but who Nicholas Seberhagen was, I don't think it's, maybe it's open, but yeah, so it's like in between. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know whose decision it was to always make sure the UX stays bad. I don't know if it's the founder who's making the decisions or what's going on there. But
When was the last time you tried it? Because I mean, I'm obviously from a different project, but when like recently with the new like Cake Wallet, Unstoppable Wallet, the UX is better.
I'm glad that it's better now because it's been a while. I'd say like 18 months. But some of the UX problems are endemic to the actual nature of it, right? Like I think the fact that you can't audit the supply is they sell it as a privacy feature, but I think that's almost a show-stopping UX project. They're always on Twitter being like, oh yeah, like look, there's a block explorer. We don't have that. I don't think that's something to brag about, really. I think that solves a practical problem for finance, and like it's possible to have privacy with an auditable supply. So the fact that they aggressively reject that based on an early technical decision, it's creative marketing to package that up and be like, that's actually a good thing about our product. And fair enough, like there should be competing projects, and people who have this super commitment to privacy probably want something like that. But I think that would be the type of example of just a low-level architecture decision that is kind of unsolvable at the UX level. So it's not necessarily just that they throw it back and like, yeah, I'm sure stuff is a little bit better than it used to be. But some of it I think can't ever really, really compete. All right. I might bite some man on Twitter or Telegram. And so, yeah, hit me up. Any other questions about this? Thanks.